Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm your host, JR. I've got a lot to talk about going on in the Big Ten. It's the basketball episode. I got my guy, Rajeev from the Bucky Report, here with us to talk about it all. No Wisconsin game, but we are going to recap this Purdue USC game that, might take less time than the margin of victory was for Purdue in this one. Congratulations, Purdue. Your margin of victory will exceed the minutes that we probably talk about this game, but I'm excited to have Rajeev back on the show to break it down with me. Rajeev, how you doing?
I'm doing great, man. I texted you a few days ago. I love Big Ten basketball. Yes, of course, I'm a Badger nut, but I love the league, man. I think it's one of my favorite things of the year is to watch a Big Ten basketball league. I love that now with 18 teams, there's a little bit more balanced scheduling. Not quite balanced, but at least it's more. And I just think it's great. Like I love the 20 game season. I think it's one of the most exciting things. And yeah, it's gonna be a tight race. I'm excited to talk about it.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, I mean, this season, the Boilermakers obviously huge win tonight for them, but this is looking like a race right now that it's much closer than it has been the past 2 years. I mean, we'll get to it at the end of the show. We're going to do some like seeding predictions and stuff like that. I still am going with Purdue to win it all, but like Michigan State, 2 losses, Michigan, 2 losses as well. Like there are some closer, aspects to the race here we're going to get into. So we're going to break down this Purdue USC game. We are then going to get into the Dusty May returning to Assembly Hall talk. What's the drama going to look like there? Do we think Dusty May is actually like a real candidate that Indiana can go after? We're going to talk about the games tomorrow. What kind of games are we on the lookout for? Are there any must-win games, stuff like that? And then finally, at the end of the show, we will get into our Big Ten tournament seeding predictions for the top 9. If you know, in the Big Ten tournament, the top 9 either get a bye or a double bye, which is huge for your ability to actually be able to win the tournament. So we're going to talk all about that. Rajeev, we got some people in the chat already. Let's go ahead and shout them out. We got Ted here. Thanks for being here, Ted. He says Purdue needs to make the open 3-point shots. I totally agree. We we were just saying that before we came on here. That'll definitely be a point. Michael says boiler down. They were not down for very long. Did they were they losing at any point in that game against USC?
Surely not. I don't think USC even
so.
got off the bus. No.
Yeah, they didn't have Desmond Claude, and didn't look like they had hardly anybody else either. So Brian is here. He says Rajeev is here. Love it. Yes. Brian? There we go. Love it. Love it. And Dave, the Badgers can pops Iowa's bubble tomorrow. Yep, they surely can. We'll talk about that when we talk about the games Saturday. I don't know if it would be more Wisconsin or if it would be more the Owen Freeman injury. What do you think there, Rajeev?
Listen, I'm always worried about playing in Iowa because those guys can just shoot like they're a scoring team just like we are, and I'm worried about us going cold one of these games.
Yeah, there you go. And Ted letting us know. Thank you, Ted. He said USC scored the first basket. See, the first basket's just a blur to me after everything else I watched. So thanks for being on the lookout there, Ted. All right, let's talk about this game, Rajeev. All right, so Purdue wins this one 90-72. There were some aspects there in the first half that made it look like it was going to be a little bit of the game. There at the end of the second half, USC comes back a little bit, makes it look a little bit more interesting, and then coming out into the second half, Purdue just expands the lead, goes for it, and they leave nothing to be desired for USC in this one. What were your thoughts overall? Desmond Claude didn't play in this game. I know that's huge for USC, but what's your thoughts? What's your takeaways from this game, Rajeev?
Yeah, look, I think Mackey Arena is an incredibly difficult place to play basketball. Purdue just plays such clean. They almost make the game just look easy, right? They're extremely good at passing. When you have point guard like Braden Smith, who can just literally distribute the ball wherever he wants. He had 13 assists tonight. 13 assists. It's unbelievable. They just do everything so well. On the other side of the floor, I felt like USC just took bad shots in the first half. Without Desmond Claude, that obviously hinders them quite a bit. St. Thomas never really got into the game today at all. Actually didn't even score. Yates had an incredible game. 30 points off 50% from the field, but they were forcing a lot. And obviously then you couple that with the fact that they were at one point 2 of 21 from 3. I think they ended up 4 of 26. It's horrific shooting. When you go to Mackey Arena and you shoot like that, you're not winning. Even though Purdue didn't shoot that well from the 3 either, they shot really well from inside the arc. They're just dominant. I mean, look, Trey Kaufman-Renn is such a monster. I'm always talking about our bigs being able to play in the post and wanting them to play more in the post. But when you have a guy that can do that, like he can do whatever he wants in the post, pretty much at will. And he seems to get every foul call ever. I just think that that's difficult to stop. Like, this team is full of really crisp, clean veteran players. And that is going to be extremely difficult to go in the rest of the season and into the tournament. They're going to be a tough out for anyone. USC didn't have a chance, JR. That's just the bottom line. Without Claude, they absolutely stood no chance. Rarely do teams go into Mackey, except your team, of course, somehow got a win in Mackey. Rarely do teams actually go in there and have any kind of success. I did not expect this to be one of those games, and sure enough, it wasn't. Purdue dominated. Not really that much of a surprise.
Yeah, I looked that game back, and Ohio State winning that game at Purdue was the first time a team had won at Mackey after being down double digits in the game since 2018. Folks, that was before Ryan Day was hired to be the Ohio State football head coach. So I looked back and I was like, holy crap, that's crazy. So it's got to happen at some point. But Purdue at home, I mean, it's just a train. It's an engine that's not going to be stopped. You can do whatever you want to do, but more often than not, you're not going to be able to stop it. You're not going to be able to stop Braden Smith either, right? 9 assists in the first half for him. He was absolutely spectacular in this game. It kind of is maddening to me watching a team like USC play Purdue, because I do feel like there are things when I watch Purdue that you can do to stop this team. Now, teams have done that and they've not been able to stop them. So, credit to them, obviously, to those. But I'm watching this USC team. They're sitting back in a zone. They're not getting physical at all, and they're giving Trey Kaufman-Renn arm's length around every. Like, at one point, they had Trey Kaufman-Renn triple teamed, but they were all triple teamed at arm's length around him, and I was like, get up in his grill, get up on him, right? Like, I know he's not going to shoot a jumper, but still, you got to get physical with him. And Braden Smith as well, you got to get physical with him. But credit to them, anytime USC did try to get into it with Braden Smith, he had a no-look pass. He had something behind the back. I mean, he was putting on a show tonight for those Boilermaker, those Boilermaker fans in the stands. It was something to watch. It was something to behold, and it felt like every single time they couldn't get something down low to Trey Kaufman-Renn, kick it out. Fletcher Lawyer's there somewhere, right? Fletcher Lawyer in this game has 9 points. He only hit 1 3, but 3 for 4. And you got production from the other guys in this one as well, which you love to. Oh, I apologize. That was the first half. Fletcher Lawyer had 14 points. He was 5 for 11, 2 for 7 in the game. But, I mean, you got production from outside of just them as well. Jakari Harris had 7 points. CJ Cox had 7. 8. Caleb First had 9 in this one. Like, your only way to beat Purdue is to stop everybody else around the big three, and then you have a chance. But if you can't stop the big three, and you can't stop who's outside the big three as well, good luck. It's curtains.
And the other thing is, like, every time there was a stop, they out rebounded USC 48-31. They had 17 offensive rebounds, like, every single time. Now, and USC had their fair share. They had 12 offensive rebounds, like 4 of them on one possession or something. But I mean, really, like, and boy, do they work so hard. Like, Kaufman-Renn rebounding the ball. There was one rebound where he actually, like, he jumped literally across the lane into the air. Like, he's so athletic. And he can get those athletic rebounds, which is something that I, as a Badger fan, really want. Someone who can athletically rebound onto my team. And we don't really have that, but these guys really do it. And it's an extremely tough weapon, because when they do have, they shot 6 of 26 from 3. It didn't matter, though, because when you get out 17 offensive rebounds and you get second chance points with that kind of a roster, you're going to be toast. Like, there's nothing you're going to be able to do. And I don't know. I mean, this is going to be such a tough out for teams in the Big Ten tournament and the NCAA tournament. But yeah, they're brutal. I mean, they're a brutal team. Listen, there was a reason this team was in the final in the national championship last year. Yes, it's a lot of it was Zach Edey, but a lot of it's these other pieces on this team that are still there. And they are definitely going to be a threat to be a Final Four team again.
Well, I think it's a lot of credit goes to, one, Trey Kaufman-Renn, but also Braden Smith last year, right? Like, everything everybody said was, well, you don't have Zach Edey coming back, so let's see what happens there. Well, Braden Smith doesn't have easy passes to Zach Edey to, get easy assists, and that was kind of what everybody was saying. I didn't fully believe that, but I did think it was a talking point, and I thought it was something that needed to be considered. I mean, 2-time National Player of the Year, you're losing him. Like,
sure.
You don't just you don't just plug and play for that. But I mean, credit to Trey Coffin-Wren, his ability down low, his athleticism, everything you talked about. Credit to Braden Smith. He's not just passing to Trey Coffin-Wren. He's finding other guys on the floor as well. And I think the biggest credit to me goes to Matt Painter. The biggest issue for this team was the 5 spot at the beginning of the year. Jacob Danielson, he goes down early on in the year. Will Berg, you hope you can get something from him, but he's just a foul machine. He can't stay in there for any long. I mean, efficient shooter, but he was just a foul machine out there, so he couldn't stay in very long. And then Caleb Furst, who did close to nothing for you last year, comes in and he's basically saved the front court of this Purdue team. That's not to say that Trey Coffin-Wren hasn't done a good job, but Trey Coffin-Wren is playing out of place when he's at the 5. On defense, he's getting too worn down going up against better bigs at the 5, and so you're not getting as much from him on offense. Now, Caleb Furst playing so much on defense and doing so much for you allows Trey Coffin-Wren to be more of that offensive force at the 4 for you down low. So I think there are so many things about this team. If you ask me today, who's my pick to win the Big Ten, it's not even close. I'm picking Purdue. Braden Smith, Big Ten Player of the Year. Like, it's just the way it is. Unless they have some type of fall off that will need to be studied for years to come, this is your best team in the Big Ten this year. I don't know if they have the best chance to go deep in the tournament. We'll see. I think there's some other teams out there that if they match up with them, it could be a difficult matchup for Purdue. But again, I've also thought there's easy ways to defend against Purdue and other teams don't do it. So who am I to judge and predict?
Yeah, I mean, I was talking to a Purdue friend of mine during the game, and he was saying that long guards that can add some length and can really frustrate Smith are really what they struggle with. And there's not a lot of those in our conference. And yeah, you have to disrupt what Smith does to really make Purdue's offense go into a bit of a shell. And look, they can have shooting days like they did today. I mean, Lawyer's a good 3-point shooter. He was 2 of 7. It wasn't like a great day for anyone out there from the 3-point line, but they're just so lethal down low. And what you said about Furst and Coffin-Wren is totally right. I mean, him being able to be that kind of a 4 that can focus on his offense and not really having to first bring so much of that 5 power in there that Coffin-Wren really can do what he needs to do. And he can really be that low block scorer and in different ways. And that's just such a weapon. And yeah, I mean, I don't disagree with you. I've kind of been back and forth on who I think is going to win the Big Ten. I'll tell you at the end of the show, but this is a really, really difficult team. And it's too bad for USC. It was one more, another welcome to the Big Ten. All those West Coast teams, boy, they had a rough season in football. They had a rough season in basketball. This is a tough league. And I think these guys are realizing it pretty quick.
Yeah, Oregon did pretty good in football, but here in basketball, ever since they got into Big Ten play, not been nearly as good for them. It's actually been Michigan State. We'll talk about them when we get to the Oregon matchup, but it's been Michigan State. They struggled going up against USC and UCLA on that kind of LA road trip over there they had. So there's a whole lot of parity in this conference. I love it. I think there's a whole lot to look at to be excited about. But yeah, we'll move on from the Purdue USC discussion here and get into the Dusty May heads back to Assembly Hall. There were rumors before Mike Woodson was talking about stepping down that the IU fans were going to boo Mike Woodson and cheer Dusty May. That's a little sad to me. I get it if it's like just some like no name, like if it's Archie Miller or something like that. But and again, I've made myself clear on this show. I don't think it's bad for fans to have expectations. I just think it's sad when a player, like a person did so much for you as a player, they try to come back and coach, and it doesn't go well, and they are received the way they are by the fans here. The way they have ever since pretty much the Illinois game at home. So I think it's going to be very interesting to kind of watch everything that's going on. I was trying to see if my in-laws would give me their tickets to this game so that way I could go and kind of like scout and see what to look at. But unfortunately, I cannot go to this one, so I'll have to rely on their information after the game. But I mean, Rajeev, like, you tell me, like, is this an interesting storyline to you? Like, can you see something possibly happening here? Like, or do you put much stock in the drama of like May returning, possibly going to be the head coach? Like, what's your whole thought on this situation?
I think it's a little overblown myself. I don't really put too much stock into it. I mean, look, Dusty May he's never even coached in Indiana. Yeah, he was a manager there. Yes, he coached under, guys like Mike Davis, but he's an Indiana boy. He went to school there. He was a manager. I get it. But I just don't. I feel like whether or not he goes there is obviously the next thing we're going to get into. But I don't really see that big of a story that comes from it. I don't put ton of stock into it. Indiana. I'm from Indiana. I'm from Lafayette, actually, where Purdue is. Indiana fans have always just kind of annoyed me to an extent. I just think they're very like entitled about their basketball program, and I get it. And sometimes like the way that they're treating Woodson, and I look, they're having a bad season. They're underperforming for sure based on the roster that they have. But no, I really just don't put a ton of stock into this. Yeah, there's IU fans that are IU fans and IU in general just always want the next best coach, right? They want the big guy. And yes, Dusty May did incredible things at FAU, and now obviously what he's doing at Michigan, turning them around in a year. Yeah, there's going to be talk about it, but I think it's a bit overblown, this whole kind of return to Assembly Hall, a guy that literally has never coached there.
Yeah, I mean, basketball manager for Bob Knight and all that stuff. But I, I'm more intrigued by kind of what will happen and how the fans will react, right? Like Philip brings it up here. Indiana is gonna give the "We Want Dusty" chance tomorrow. Like if that happens, early on in the game, like how stupid do they look if Indiana lose? Like if Indiana wins, though, like. I mean, I guess not stupid, but like how weird, how foolish does that look? So I'm interested in the whole aspect of it. Like, how do Indiana fans receive him when he comes in? What are they going to do to Mike Woodson? Like, are they just going to kind of leave Mike Woodson alone because they're like, all right, the dude's retiring, he's stepping down. We don't need to be, these animals against him anymore. Like, I'm just interested in kind of everything that's going to go on, and I feel like the broadcast is going to acknowledge all of it.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
this is not a situation where like, SEC chants are going on in a stadium and ESPN doesn't want to put it out there that's going on, right? Like they don't want that. But Fox or whoever has this game tomorrow, is it Fox? I think it's CBS. Like they're going to really want to, like dig in to all of this drama and put more against it and put more to it because it's just more for their TV product. So should Michigan fans be worried, Rajeev? Like, should they be concerned? Obviously, like, nothing's going to happen at this game, but, like, overall, the end of the season is going to come. Should they be concerned about Indiana possibly coming and stealing Dusty May away? I will say the contract does allow for him to possibly be hired away. Like that buyout isn't so big. I forget exactly what it was when I saw it. I was like, okay, that's not the biggest buyout in the world. Like a rabid school like Indiana could go after him and pay him more money. Like, should Michigan fans be concerned here? Or are you kind of like, I don't see it happening? What's your thoughts?
I do think they should be concerned. I think that look, I'm a big believer in like coaches striking when the iron is hot, which is why I'm quite surprised that Kursignetti is staying in Indiana. I think his stock's never going to be high as high as it is right now. I think when you were a student manager working under Bob Knight and you went to IU, I think he was there until 96 to 2000. What's that guy's dream? Like he wants to coach basketball. Of course, he wants to coach at IU. And when he's there as a student manager, his dream growing up is probably to be the coach in Indiana. Whether or not you are a believer in Indiana's program or not, or what they are, what they've become, they're still one of the traditional sort of big six programs in college basketball. There are deep pockets, as evidenced by the NIL money in the football team right now. There's a lot of money that surrounds that program, so they can pay him what he wants. I think it's really more of the strike while the iron is hot. Now, yes, he took FAU to the Final Four, and that's great. He's turned Michigan around in a year, like instantly turned them around. He could stay at Michigan and build that program, or he could go coach at his alma mater and go to a place where he is probably, not necessarily knowing anything, but probably wanted to be his entire life, probably dreamed of taking over for Bob Knight when he was a student manager. I mean, yeah, I think you have to be worried. Just like I would tell IU fans to be worried about Kursignetti because not that he's doing it now, but you should be worried. Like there's no reason why someone isn't going to bounce to a better program because that's just the nature of the sport that we're in, that it's going on right now, and the nature of college athletics. Yeah, absolutely they should. And if they come calling, I think Dusty May should do it.
Wow. I have mixed opinions on this. Like I do think that there is a lot that IU offers in terms of NIL, paying more, stuff like that. I do think that there is a little bit more of kind of a national brand in basketball for Indiana just because of the fans and stuff like that. Michigan is more regarded as a football school and stuff. So, but I mean, Michigan, we saw what happened under John Beilein. Like you can still be a powerhouse there and get national recognition. So I'm just saying I think it comes easier at Indiana, but I look at this situation and I say, okay, like Dusty May's a smart guy. I don't think Dusty May's one of those guys that's just like constantly, hunting for a new job. Like if he was, I think he probably would have left after that Final Four run at Florida Atlantic when really his stock couldn't have been higher. It's kind of like what you're talking about with Kirk Cinetti. But the way I look at this is like, I think Dusty May understands that what he has bought himself at Michigan right now is more than what he would buy himself at Indiana right away. Like those fans' expectations are high. Again, I don't think fans should lower their expectations, unless it's just completely astronomical. Like it's a failure if you don't win the NCAA tournament. But I do think that Dusty May has bought himself a good situation here at Michigan where if next year they're last place in the Big Ten, people are going to look at it and say, okay, that year sucked, but it's okay. We were near first place last year. Dusty May can still do this. Whereas you go to Indiana, you're last place in the Big Ten in Indiana. Like they're not going to say, "Oh, well, he did well his first year at Michigan." Like they're not going to be saying that. They're going to be all over him. So I do think it's a bit of a double-edged sword. I would be concerned still if I'm a Michigan fan, just because of any time there is somebody who has possibly more NIL, possibly more ability to pay them more than somebody else. Like I would always be concerned about that. But as far as I'm concerned, like. I think the smarter decision for Dusty May is to stay at Michigan. Like I think ultimately that's the smarter decision, and I think Dusty May is a smart guy. Unless IU just completely blows him out of the water and says we'll pay you, millions upon millions upon millions. Which if they do that, you better hope it works out.
It's a good point. I think you bring up good points there because obviously he bought himself a good situation, as you said. He's not going to have. I mean, yeah, he has so much sort of capital built up in one season so far. I mean, anybody was going to do better than Jamal Howard. That was a disaster. Yeah, look, I think.
Jawad Howard, you mean?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah. I don't know why I said Jamal.
You're good.
Yeah, I think that like that he was really bad. My gosh, I wanted him to stay there. I didn't want Dusty May to go to Michigan.
They almost gave him a second year. That's the thing too. Like it's like, okay.
Yeah. Crazy.
I don't know. Go ahead. Sorry.
I think that I definitely hear you, and I think that it would not surprise me if he stayed at Michigan. That would be fine. But it's ultimately about what he's probably always wanted as a coach. And maybe it's like, you know what, I want to build my own program. I don't want to go to Indiana and turn them around. But also Indiana hasn't really been a powerhouse program for quite a while. And there's probably a sexiness to that, right? And an attraction to say, you know what, I'm going to go back and turn Indiana basketball into what it was when I was there. And before that with Bob Knight. So I do feel like there is something to that. Basically, at the end of the day, it wouldn't surprise me if he went, and it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't, because I totally hear you on staying in Michigan and building upon what he's done so far. But there is still like this, there's a cachet, like there's a thing when it comes to Indiana basketball, especially if you grew up in the state and if you went to school there, you really have that in your blood. And I think there is something to that. It's the same thing that I always say, not that you guys want him now, but like I talk about Luke Fickell all the time about like eventually maybe if Ryan Day loses to Michigan more and more, and eventually Luke Fickell can actually do something at Wisconsin, we worry about that because you kind of want to go back to where things started for you. So I wouldn't be surprised, honestly, either way that he does it. But I do think you make good points about for reasoning for him to stay.
Yeah, there's always the draw of going back and stuff like that. It's funny. Somebody else said that to me right before Ryan Day got his extension, and then we found out his buyout is like $90 million or something like that. And it's like, all right, none of these teams that have old Ohio State alumni need to be too worried, because even if Ryan Day's last place in the Big Ten, they're not getting rid of him with $90 million buyout. That's not happening. So, all right, few comments really fast, and I'm gonna play a game with Rajeev, and then you guys in the comments can participate as well. There we go. John says, thanks for being here, John. He says, we're not getting Dusty. Maybe. I'm not sure. Dave says Bobby Knight is not coming back. Iowa needs to lower expectations. I do think that like expectations at the beginning. I think Indiana fans have been pretty realistic. Like at the beginning of Archie Miller and at the beginning of Mike Woodson, like they were pretty realistic, but it's just kind of as time goes on, it's eventually like, what's going to happen here? And I think Purdue being good doesn't help with that either because you look up north in your state and you're like, well, these guys are winning the Big Ten 3 times, like in 3 times in a row. We can't even get 9th place. Like, come on.
Yeah, I mean that obviously gives them a lot of ammunition to continue their booing and all their issues they're having because yeah, I mean it definitely makes it a lot harder when you've got that team up north doing what they're doing.
Yeah, for sure. We got Terry here. Terry, thanks for being here. He says, hey, JR, just joined for the record. We want Brad Stevens, but that's a pipe dream. Yeah, I think it's funny. Every single time I see a coaching hot board, it's always like Brad Stevens at the top, and it's like I'm putting this here because Indiana fans want me to put this here, but everybody knows this isn't going to happen. Let's move on to the next thing.
Right. You're right. Everybody wants him.
Everybody wants him. Steve, thanks for being here. Steve, he says IU probably has the least restriction. I apologize. IU probably has less restrictions academically when it comes to transfers too. That is something that needs to be considered. Less academic restrictions to possibly bring in transfers. Didn't seem to matter with bringing in Danny Wolf from Yale. Yale's a pretty good school. So, but yeah, that is something to think about there. Philip asks, when is the last time a Big Ten coach switched between schools? I don't recall it happening. I don't recall that happening either.
Yeah, I don't.
Can you think of that, Rajeev?
I can't think of it. I definitely cannot. But again, it's a different situation when you're talking about your alma mater. That maybe that's a reason to do it. But yeah, that's a fair point. I don't know that that's ever happened.
Yeah, I don't know if that's ever happened either. Interesting. Brian says you guys froze. Dave says, well, I hope we're back. Let us know, guys. If we did freeze, we'll just post it as a recording later. All right. Game time, Rajeev. Okay. Game time. I am going to list off names and you're going to give me just real fast, like rapid reaction. If you want to give any thoughts on it, feel free, but you don't have to give like a ton of thoughts. Just rapid reaction to it. Dusty May, or you tell me which coach you would rather have. Okay. All right. Okay. Dusty May or Mick Cronin?
Dusty May for sure. Mick Cronin just, I'm not a fan of what they're doing out there. I mean, look, they're okay. I don't like Mick Cronin. I don't know why. I just kind of got this like feeling I don't really like the guy. Dusty May is such a likable guy. So yeah, definitely over Mick Cronin.
But he is the toughest guy on the team though, Rajeev.
Yeah, of course he is, because that's how it works.
I think he might be the toughest coach in the Big Ten, the way he's talking. I love Mick Cronin press conferences. All right, I might try to get some Indiana credentials if Mick Cronin becomes the Indiana head coach. Not to ask a question. I don't want to ask a question. I just want to see his reaction to all the other questions. Okay, Dusty May or Randy Bennett. Randy Bennett is the coach of St. Mary's. If people aren't aware, which one?
I'd say Randy Bennett. I mean, the guy's had just incredibly long years of success, albeit in a weak conference, but he's been to the tournament countless times. He's done well. Yeah, I would say Bennett over Dusty May. Dusty May he's proven a lot at FAU, certainly, but he needs to prove it at the bigger schools too.
Yeah. I'd probably lean Bennett just because of longevity and stuff like that as well, but it'd be hard to pick between the two. Okay, next one. Dusty May or Chris Collins?
No, Dusty May. Chris Collins, I mean, you could make the argument, right? He's done well at Northwestern, but has he done that well? I mean, he hasn't been like a perennial tournament team or anything like that. So ultimately, what's the performance that Dusty May has proven, and he's put on film and he's actually put in records and been to the tournament several times, gotten to a Final Four. You got to go Dusty May over Chris Collins.
All right. Dusty May over Chris Collins. Kent would be very mad at you if he heard you say that. So.
I know. Sorry, Kent.
All right. Dusty May, or this is a pretty controversial one. I've heard a lot of people go back and forth on this one. Scott Drew.
That's a tough one. That was actually, I saw this list ahead of time, and I struggle with this one because Scott Drew's done really well at Baylor, obviously. I mean, he has a national title to his name. I'm probably going to go Scott Drew, honestly. I mean, I feel like that with just the overall sort of cachet, what he's built and what he's done throughout his career. Yeah, I'm going to go Scott Drew on that one.
All right, all right. Yeah, I think if you have a national championship, it's hard to go with anybody else. Even though Scott Drew's not had the greatest years following that. All right, Dusty May or Chris Beard out of Ole Miss, former Texas head coach. I think a lot of people are aware of the scandal, whatever happened there at Texas that brought him to Ole Miss. But Dusty May or Chris Beard?
I'd go Dusty May over Chris Beard. Yeah, Chris Beard doesn't really, nothing that he's done has really impressed me very much. He's also a guy that I feel like the next guy too we're going to talk about, I just feel like they're going to stay in the South. I don't really see him coming up to the Big Ten. So I'd go Dusty May.
Okay. All right. I think Chris Beard is intriguing to me. Chris Beard, his he's done pretty well at Ole Miss, and I've been surprised by that. I thought he might go there and kind of bolt as soon as he can after that, but he's been there 2 years now. This is his second season, and he's been okay. What are they this year? 17-6. Like, yeah,
they're projected as I think a 5 seed right now.
Yeah, they don't have a single loss other than quad 1 losses this year, which in the SEC, basically every team you play is quad 1 team. So it's hard to lose to anybody but quad 1 teams. All right. All right. And then my final one I have for you. And then if anybody, I guess, in the chat wants to say one, maybe instead, we can do that and discuss it together. But Dusty May or Buzz Williams, Texas A&M head coach.
Yeah, this is funny because I have read a couple things already that he's already being sort of talked about for that job. I'm still going to go Dusty May. Dusty May to Indiana to me still makes a lot more sense than probably does for other people. I just think that at the end of the day, Indiana is going to need someone who knows that school. Now, again, he hasn't coached there, but I do think he kind of brings back a little bit of sort of cachet behind his name and everything he's done so far. And I still think Dusty May is a better hire than Buzz Williams.
All right. We do have a couple mentions in the chat, so let's discuss them really fast. John says someone mentioned Rick Pitino. My Dusty May or Rick Pitino. I have a hard no on Rick Pitino rule in my life, but that's just my rule. Rajeev, what say you?
Oh yeah, no, total hard rule against it. I mean, I feel like you're inviting scandal and stuff that you don't want to be a part of. I'm just not. No, definitely not. If it was my school, it would be such an easy answer. Absolutely no on Rick Pitino.
Yeah. I agree. Philip says Ben McCollum. If you don't know who that is the current head coach of Drake. He took over for DeVries, I think was his name. Is it Tucker DeVries or is that his son? One of the two. He was at Northwest Missouri State for 15 years before going to Drake. I'm going to be honest, Philip. I don't know a whole lot about Ben McCollum. I'd probably go with Dusty May just because I've not heard of a Final Four run or anything like that for Ben McCollum, but maybe I'm just uneducated.
Yeah, I don't know a ton about him either. He's a young guy. I think that's maybe one of the draws because you see like a young coach that's kind of up and coming and doing well. But yeah, I don't know enough about him to really have an opinion.
Yeah. There was somebody else. Terry says Dane Fife. I believe he's a current assistant at Indiana. Dusty May.
Yeah. I mean, he at the end of the day, Dusty May took FAU to the Final Four. I feel like that's all Indiana fans really need to know. I mean, of whether they'd want them, right? Dane Fife, certainly again brings that Indiana history, but not much else. It's certainly not much success at the head coaching level.
Yeah. Brian says Ion College basketball brought up talking about McDermott. He's at Creighton, right?
Creighton. Yeah, he's at Creighton. Yeah. I mean, look, he's a great coach. Obviously, they've had a lot of tournament success. That would be a name that wouldn't surprise me if anyone wanted. If McDermott was ready to leave and go somewhere else and go to one of the bigger programs, that wouldn't surprise me at all. In fact, I might take McDermott over Dusty May.
Really? Yeah. I think I'd go with Dusty May, but honestly, if I looked into it, I wouldn't be surprised if I went with McDermott. Just first reaction, I'd probably go May, but yeah. Philip says Will Wade. I'd probably go May just because all the scandal stuff and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Dave says Rick Pitino's son, Richard Pitino. I think we saw him at Minnesota. I'd go with
We
Dusty
did.
May.
Not successful, not good.
Now, I will say Minnesota, it's hard to be successful at the basketball program in Minnesota. Not a whole lot of resources there and stuff, but yeah, I'd still go Dusty May. So, last one. This is an interesting one. Florida head coach Todd Golden. He's got Florida this year at 19-3. Now they've only played 7 quad one games, but still, I mean, pretty impressive what the Gators have done this season. You going Dusty May or Todd Golden here?
It's impressive what he's done this season. I don't know his history that much and whether he has been that successful outside of this season, but no, I would still say Dusty May. I think Dusty May honestly is one of the sort of the hottest names in basketball right now. And again, like I said at the beginning of the show, strike while the iron's hot. If you're going to get him, now's the time to get him.
Yeah, Todd Golden was at San Francisco. He had some of those good years going to the tournament, and I think didn't they lose to the 16? Didn't they lose to the 16 seed that beat Virginia? Was that San Francisco, or did they beat the 16 seed? UMBC.
They didn't beat the 16 seed.
They didn't beat them. Okay, so they must have lost to him, if I'm remembering correctly. Yeah, no, I just remember. I remember that Virginia team losing to UMBC, and then they beat some other coach. Yeah. Anyway, all right. Sorry. I think that's a good discussion there. Not really sure where else we can go from there, other than Dusty May. If Indiana can get him, I think it's huge for them. We'll see if it's going to happen. We'll see what the drama is and everything else going into the game. So everybody, we are going to be right back. We are going to watch a CBB Analytics commercial, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about a preview for the games tomorrow on Saturday. Stay with us. CBB Analytics isn't just another stat site, it's your ultimate destination for in-depth college basketball analysis used by fans and even the coaches. It has comprehensive stats for men's and women's basketball across Division 1 through 3, dating all the way back to 2018. From shooting percentage to game recap, CBB Analytics has it all. Try CBB Analytics for free or pay for a tier to take your basketball knowledge to the next level. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle, use code HUDDLE on CBB Analytics. Save yourself $30 off your purchase there. So if you use code HUDDLE, HUDDLE, you can save $30 there. Please do like and subscribe. These basketball shows have turned into kind of just spot whenever we can throw them up there if there's only one game a night or something like that, just because of how crazy the Big Ten schedule is. So anytime we do them, we do always have our Big Ten basketball power ranking show on Monday morning. Me and Kent go through that there, so you can always catch that. But other than that, basketball shows are just kind of spot up and be looking out if we schedule an episode after a game or something like that. So, all right, our Saturday preview, Rajeev. We have a good amount of games, 6 games overall tomorrow going on. Your Badgers are going to be facing Iowa at Iowa. Not always an easy place to play at. We obviously have the return of Dusty May to Indiana. Oregon goes to Michigan State. I think that's a game that Oregon needs and Michigan State needs right now as well. Both of them on losing streaks. Illinois, I think this is a sleeper game. Illinois going to Minnesota. Look, I'm not trying to disparage Illinois here, but we saw what happened when Michigan went into Minnesota, and Minnesota almost took down Ohio State too. If it wasn't for a terrible foul at the end of the game, this is a Minnesota team that would have had a win against Ohio State as well. So many people just look at Minnesota as a terrible team. I get it, but they got some star players. Dawson Garcia, good player. They got some guys in the front court that can make something happen too. So Rajeev, which games are you looking forward to the most tomorrow?
Well, certainly Michigan, Indiana. We've already talked about that one a lot. That's certainly one that's interesting to me. But yeah, Michigan State, Oregon. Oregon was a team that was ranked in the top 10 for a minute. They've had a bit of a losing streak. So is Michigan State. And I think that that's an intriguing matchup, not because I really necessarily expect it to be a loss for Michigan State, but it is an intriguing matchup to see sort of how Oregon does in that kind of an environment and how Michigan State can respond after losing to 2 West Coast teams. They're reeling a bit. You're looking back at the standings. You're looking, all of a sudden Purdue's caught up to you completely. Michigan's right there. There's just a lot going on. And I think ultimately the top of the conference, you look at Michigan State, you look at Michigan. Those are 2 really intriguing games for me. And honestly, the Badgers as well. Obviously for me personally, that's intriguing. But look, we put 116 points up on that team recently. They're ready to come after us. They can score a lot of points, and we definitely can score a lot of points, but we also have some issues defensively. So that's going to be another. And any game on the road is super hard. So yeah, a lot of good matchups though.
Yeah, I like Wisconsin more with Owen Freeman out. You've
Sure.
talked about some of the issues with down low, the rebounding, and some of the defense that can happen down there. So with Owen Freeman out, I like that better there. But yeah, I mean, this is still an Indiana team that has Peyton Sandfort, who has NBA level talent. We'll see. I think he probably would have been drafted. He probably would have been drafted higher this past year than what he's going to get drafted this year. But overall, like, this is still an Iowa team that has Josh Dix. They have a couple point guards who do pretty well too, and Brock Hardy and Drew Thelwell. So a lot to look out for there. Rajeev, I wanted to bring this up to you. So I didn't put this in the notes. I kind of just wanted your like honest reaction here. So Oregon right now sits at 16-7 on the year. There are how many? One, two, three, four, five, six, seven, eight Big Ten teams that are in the top 30 in net. Oregon is not one of them. Oregon has the most quad one wins in the conference at 8, more than Purdue, more than Illinois, more than Wisconsin. Like they have 8 quad one wins, the most, but they're all the way down there at 35. Do you think like Oregon deserves more credit, or are you kind of buying into this kind of slouch run that they've had lately, not doing so well? I think they're have 6 of their last 7 are losses. Like, it's been a brutal stretch for Oregon. The loss at home to Illinois, getting absolutely blown out like that was a terrible look as well. Or are you one of those people that's like, Oregon is better than this, we're not giving them enough credit? Or are you one of those people that's like, this is who they are. This is what we've seen from this Oregon team. I'm going to start believing what they've showed us in the Big Ten and not what they showed us in their out of conference. What's your thoughts?
For sure. I definitely lean more towards this is kind of what they are now. And I equate it back to what happened to my team last year and having a stellar non-con, a stellar January. Then we went in to do a tailspin in February. We still ended up having a decent end of the season. We Purdue the tournament. But yeah, I think ultimately it's what have you done for me lately? The conference is the conference. Like, this is the league that Oregon's in now. They're struggling mightily to get wins out of it. I think they're 5-7 in conference. I think, because that might be right.
Yeah.
Maybe I'm not. Yeah, that's unbelievable. And they're just not performing. They're not doing what they need to do. They're not playing well. They're all the measurables, all the little things that happen in these games, they're just not doing. Yeah, they've got the wins on their schedule, no doubt. But ultimately, if you can't sustain that for the college basketball season, you are what you are right now. And I do tend to believe that this is going to continue to get worse before it gets better. This team very well might have that many quad wins and honestly miss the tournament, because you got to get to 10 wins if you got to really be 500 in your conference. No, you don't have to, but that's kind of been the measuring stick for a long time. I don't know that they get there. And if they don't get out of this slump soon, they're going to really be a struggle. Right now, they're projected as a 7 seed, but that definitely is falling, and they could find themselves out of the tournament if they don't pick it up.
Correct myself. I said 6 losses of their last 7. I meant 5 losses of their last 6. I apologize. Incorrect stat there, but I'll correct it. Yeah, no, I think you're right. Like, now I do think there is hope in the aspect of Wisconsin, kind of came back in the Big Ten tournament, right? And
Yep.
really showed, that, okay, this is the team we really are. We struggled there for a while, but we can come back and we can show the team we are. I do think Oregon has the potential to do that if nobody's paying attention. Like, they did something similar to that last year in the Pac-12 tournament last year for them. However, I would say the Big Ten is not the Pac-12. Like, you have the ability to do that in the Pac-12 tournament. I don't think you have that luxury if you're not a top 9 seed in the Big Ten tournament. And right now, Oregon is what, 8th or 9th in the Big Ten. I think they're 9th right now. They're on the verge of possibly losing that top 9 seed. And if things really spiral, now I don't think they will. They have a pretty favorable schedule to end the year. Like, they have Indiana, USC, Rutgers, Northwestern. It's at Iowa, at Washington, but still, like, you should be able to win a good amount of those games. But like, I was texting Sonny and Kent about it. Like, could Oregon miss the Big Ten tournament and still make the NCAA tournament? Like,
if they miss the
that,
Big Ten
could
tournament,
that happen?
if they miss the Big Ten tournament, there's no chance they're making the NCAA tournament, because if that happens, that means they would end the year with like 7 or 8 Big Ten wins and 12, 13 losses. You're not making the tournament with that kind of conference record. I just don't see that happening. Yeah, their schedule definitely lightens up after this. They got Northwestern records at home, and then their March is easy. You're right. USC, Indiana, and Washington. They could win them, but listen, like this team, this league has shown that at any moment these guys can lose. And would not surprise me if they're going to have to get to 10. Their magic number's got to be 10 wins in conference.
Yeah, they need to get 10 and possibly 9, but 10 needs to be the goal. Philip believe Oregon covers the spread tomorrow, and he says it's because Oregon needs Biddle to play well, and MSU has terrible bigs. He also believes Dana Altman has earned the trust to turn things around. I tell you, I don't think this is a Dana Altman issue. Like, I see Dana Altman on the sidelines. He's getting ready to pull his hair out sometimes because I do think he's coaching these guys up and he's telling them what to do. But Jackson Shellstad is going out there and just chucking up shots. And then Nate Biddle gets down low and a double team hits him. And he's like, what do I do? Like, they've coached these guys up. I'm confident in that. Dana Altman is no slouch. He's had a long career. He's one of the winningest head coaches, active or otherwise. Like, he's a really good coach. For whatever reason, this Oregon team just panics. And when they panic, they start chucking up bad shots and they start getting bad turnovers. And overall, like they have got to learn some composure, which I didn't think would happen with how many players this Oregon team was bringing back. But I don't know if it's just the Big Ten. I don't know if it's the physicality of the Big Ten, what it is. But this team just loses composure fast. And it's really one of the things that derails them.
I think it is the physicality and their lack of composure, because ultimately in this conference, like you will get stomped if you're going to turn the ball over 15, 17 times a game. You're going to be in trouble regardless of who you are and how good your roster is. They're doing like I said earlier, they're doing the little things pretty poorly right now. And in this conference, you just can't do that. And we are a stacked conference. I've been talking on my show. I think the Big Ten is super deep. There's a lot of good teams in it, and every single win you can notch in this conference is a good win, especially on the road. And yeah, I mean, Oregon's just not getting over the hump. They certainly on paper, they're one of the best teams in the conference, but in reality and in what we're seeing on the court, they're just not there. And I think the Big Ten's getting to them, similar to where their other Southern California counterparts happen with football. The Big Ten's getting to them.
We got Fisherman here. He says, hopefully JR believes in his own team now. I'm getting there, Fisherman. I'm getting there. They'll make the tournament, I think. And I have some positive news on my thoughts about Ohio State coming up in the next segment. Don't worry, Fisherman. I think you're right, Rajeev. One last thing, and then we'll move on and we'll get to the seeding predictions. Illinois, Minnesota. All right, now. I just kind of want your overarching thoughts. I don't want to get you in trouble with Illinois fans, Rajeev, okay? But I do just kind of want your overarching thoughts here, right? Like, am I crazy to be concerned about Illinois at Minnesota? They lose their last game against Rutgers. I mean, Rutgers does have Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper, but overall, like, I watch this Illinois team, and they do eventually correct things, but I watch them go out there. Kasparis Jakonis is not what he was before. I watch him chucking up three-pointers. I see role players not really doing much other than what they've done this season. Like, they need Kasparis Jakonis to be a really awesome player. Tomislav Ivicic coming back is huge, but he's only one man. Like, he can only do so much for him. I really like what Merez Johnson is doing down low, but overall, like, there's just an aspect of this team right now that doesn't seem to be able to put it all together at the right times. Now, they did against Ohio State. I give them credit for that. They did against Ohio State. They basically stopped shooting three-pointers for like the last second half of the second half, which was the right idea. But, I mean, in this phase of Illinois figuring out, because there's no doubt they're talented. They're very talented. But in this phase of them figuring out, am I wrong to be slightly concerned about this Illinois game at Minnesota?
You're definitely not wrong. I wrote it down as the game that I think the team needs the most. Illinois absolutely needs to come out swinging here. They were sitting in the top 4 of the conference not too long ago. Now they're all of a sudden in that huge middle block with 6-7 losses. Like they're on the verge of really falling down the standings very, very quickly. They need this win. I think you said it. I mean, Kasparis Jakonis was a guy that at the beginning of the season, our guy Sonny was constantly like, He was a special looking player, and right now he's just in a slump. Riley seems to be the only guy that's really doing a lot of good for them right now. They've got to stop shooting the three. I don't understand. And that's where Underwood, I feel like, what is Underwood doing right now? I'm like, you gotta fix this. They gotta figure out. Ivisic is such a weapon down low that they just need to do what they do well. Minnesota, listen, Dawson Garcia, I mean, we played him. He ate us up in the first half. Now, luckily, we put on a stretch four who guarded him pretty well in the second half, our Xavier Amos did. But he's ripping teams apart. He is such an incredible player. No, they're not a good team, but you're going on the road in the Big Ten. See my previous comment. There isn't a single game in this conference on the road that I'm like, yeah, that should just automatically be a win. No, you win your games at home. If you split on the road, that to me, that's a huge win. I think they should absolutely be concerned because they're not in the right headspace. Their confidence is low right now. And they're going to try to chuck up threes tomorrow, and it's probably not going to go in. And Dawson Garcia is going to frustrate the hell out of them because he's a great player. If they can't find a way to really defend him, which a very few teams can defend him well, if you can find a way to defend him, then that gives them a better chance. But the game's going to be close because Garcia is going to keep him in it, and because Illinois is probably not going to shoot that well, especially in the barn. But boy, do they need this game. I mean, you talk about that. To me, it's clear who needs this the most. It's Illinois tomorrow. They've got to get it right. The end of the season is coming faster than we know it. The Big Ten tournament's going to be here. The NCAA tournament's going to be here. And Illinois was a team that a lot of people looked at as a potential favorite in the conference, certainly a team that could go well in March. It doesn't look that way right now, and they need to get right very quickly. Otherwise, they're going to find themselves in a tough spot in a massive log jam sitting in the middle of the conference.
Yeah, I mean, they're a young team. Like, I didn't think the youth would get to them as much because I felt like some of their youth was, experienced players overseas and stuff. Like, but it's clear that some of this stuff right now, I mean, it's a long season. It's getting to some of these players, and this is where Brad Underwood's coaching is the most crucial right now, right? You have a team that doesn't have as much confidence as they had earlier in the year. I hear him during the press conferences. He's doing his best to instill confidence in these guys as much as he possibly can. They're going to get right eventually. They are going to get right eventually. You just have to get right at the right time, so that way you're set up well for the end of the season. Would this be your upset pick, Rajeev? If you had to pick an upset tomorrow, would that be your upset, or would you go someplace else?
No, actually, I don't think it's gonna be an upset. I think Illinois will get it done tomorrow. So I don't even want to tell you my upset pick will be. I'm worried about my own game as a potential upset pick, and that always scares me. Ultimately, if I was picking one upset, it would be Indiana. I think Indiana is going to get it done. They need a quad one win so bad. And I think their fan base is going to be, hopefully they're going to be up for it. They're not going to be booing, but I do think Indiana actually gets the upset over Michigan.
Yeah. I like those picks. If I had to go with an easy one, I'd say Northwestern over Washington, but that's also because it's, a 1.5 spread, but whatever. That's like my betting, right? It's like, okay, what's the smallest spread here possible? Okay, upset. There we go. All right, everybody, we're going to run an ad real quick, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about our top 9 seeding predictions for the Big Ten tournament. Stay with us. Homefield is your go-to destination for premium collegiate apparel with a passion for comfort and a flair for vintage design. Homefield brings you gear that is comfortable and stylish. With over 150 colleges to choose from, Homefield digs deep into the archives, uncovering forgotten logos, iconic mascots, and legendary moments to create one-of-a-kind apparel. Use my code TBTH for 15% off for new customers, or use my link in the description. Back here on the Big Ten Huddle. Please do listen to the podcast. If you don't catch it live, we do have the podcast option available. Obviously, you can always go back and listen on YouTube as well. We do post cut-ups and stuff like that of the episodes too. But overall, if you want to listen to the entire live episode, just know that option is there too. So, all right, we got a good lively chat here. So I'm hoping for some chat participation here. We'll go to you guys and get your thoughts too. I apologize. I forgot to switch the graphic there. There it is. So we'll go to the chat for you guys' reactions and stuff like that too. But I want to try and nail down who we think are the top 9 seeds in the Big Ten tournament. So number 1 through 4, which currently as it stands is Purdue, Michigan State, Michigan, and Wisconsin. And then 5 through 9 is UCLA, Maryland, Illinois, Ohio State, and Oregon. There's a bit of a log jam for the 5 through 7, but if you look at total record, Oregon has the total record there, which puts them above all the other 5 and 7. So I want to try and nail down who do we think is the top four first, Rajeev, right? Like, do we think that this top four, Purdue, Michigan State, Michigan, and Wisconsin, is going to hold? Do we see possibly with Michigan State having this really tough schedule, maybe a UCLA could get in there? I don't think Maryland has an opportunity with that loss to Ohio State. I think Illinois has too many losses to get back into it unless something crazy happens. Obviously, it's the Big Ten. Anything can happen. But what's your thoughts here on the top four, Rajeev?
I think that 6 losses could definitely get you in that top 4, just because
Okay.
these teams are going to lose some down the stretch. Maryland would have been my pick until the Ohio State game, because I was actually, like I said, I turned that game off because I was like, this is over, and somehow that happened. So I like Maryland's team, but I'm going to go with as it sits now. I think Purdue, Michigan State, and Michigan are, to me, like going to be that's clearly the top 3, at least. I mean, as of now, but I would say Wisconsin's going to be 4. We do play at Purdue and at Michigan State, which is very difficult, and I don't think we're going to win either of those games. But like I said, I do think 6 will probably get you into the top 4. UCLA is the other X factor team that they've been playing well lately. They beat us. They beat Michigan State. Like, that's definitely, and they've got a lot of good players on that team. They've got a lot of size up front. So I would probably say Wisconsin or UCLA to be in that 4th spot.
Yeah, you guys put your top 4 seeds in the chat. I want to know what you guys think. I think UCLA has a pretty good shot, just with the way they've been playing lately, and the type of ball that they found Adea Mora, and he's really been a revelation for this team to be able to do some of the things that they're doing. The end of the season for them is not anything terrible. I mean, there are a good amount of quad 1 games there, but you get Penn State at home, Minnesota at home, Ohio State at home, USC at home, and then your road games are at Illinois, at Indiana, at Purdue, at Northwestern. Like, if you're looking at UCLA here, if they take care of business the way they're supposed to, they probably got, what do we say, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They probably got 5 or 6 wins there. So if you got a UCLA team finishing 13-6, or what would it be?
14-6.
14-6. Thank you. If you got them finishing 14-6, 13-5, like, that seems like a pretty good scenario to me. I might pick UCLA, but at the same time, I think Wisconsin has a really good shot as well. I feel like they kind of learned from the way things ended last year, and they also have a favorable schedule to end it here. As we talked about before, at Iowa, they get Illinois, Oregon at home, Washington and Penn State at home as well, and then their road games of at Purdue, at Michigan State, at Minnesota. They got a good shot of going 14-6 and or 13-7 as well. So really good opportunity here for both those teams. It's going to be really interesting down the stretch. Could you see Michigan or Michigan State kind of falling off and going downhill? What's your thoughts?
Maybe, but not out of the top 4. I think that the Big Ten, for as far as who's the top spot, I think there could be certainly a discussion there. I don't see any of those teams falling out of the top 4, just because that would take a lot of bad losses really to go. Because then if you're talking about like Michigan falling out, you got to get 5 more losses. I don't think that's happening. I mean, that would be a lot.
Yeah, I mean, like, this Michigan team is very perplexing to me, because, like, you made the comment earlier, you're not going to win in the Big Ten by, turning the ball over 15, 16 times a game. Michigan does that, and they still win in the Big Ten. It's kind of crazy. They average 15 turnovers on the year. Now, they've got some bad losses, right? They're 6-2 against quad 1 teams. Like, they've got some losses on here. Minnesota, they shouldn't have lost. Wake Forest early in the year, they shouldn't have lost. But I mean, they've won their last 3 games. They do have a pretty rough stretch to end the season, though. I mean, you got Purdue at Ohio State. It's not the best home court advantage in the world, but Ohio State's looking pretty good right now. You got Michigan State twice at Nebraska, which we know how good that home court advantage for Nebraska is. Illinois, Maryland, like, I don't really see a gimme on the rest of the schedule for Michigan. Maybe Rutgers, but we just saw Rutgers take down Illinois. Like, you don't play your game against Rutgers, and Ace Bailey and Dylan Harper are gonna get you. So, like, I'm not predicting 5 losses for Michigan by any means, but this is a pretty tough stretch Michigan has, and Michigan State has it as well. So I wouldn't be surprised if we see one of these 2 teams drop out of the top 4.
Yeah, I mean, that is a good point. If you look at their schedule, it is really interesting. They've got, I mean, their March is absolutely brutal.
It is.
Oh, man. Yeah. I mean, we'll see. I'd be perfectly happy if one of them fell out so that we could have an easier chance of getting into the top 4.
Dave's calling it now. He says Michigan's going to lose in the first round, especially if they play a team like Drake. There are certain teams you play in the first round, and it's just like you're sweating the entire time
Man,
leading up to it. You're like, I'm supposed to win this game. They're a 14 seed, but I know this team is better than a 14 seed.
like Wolf and Golden are so good. I mean, those two, they beat the crap out of us running a pick and roll all day. I find that that's a very difficult team to beat. Like, yes, they have a lot of tough games on the schedule, but honestly, JR, if they won the conference, it wouldn't even surprise me with how good those two bigs are and how good of a job Dusty May has done there. I'm not picking that. I'm with you. I think Purdue wins the conference, but it wouldn't surprise me. Like, they have such a tough schedule, but man, they are a really good team. And I don't know that I think any of these top 4 or 5 teams that we've been talking about can make a run in the NCAA tournament. I really do.
Yeah, there's a good amount of teams here that I think can make a run with, some of the specialty things they're able to do, and kind of being able to mask and hide some of their weaknesses too. So, all right, let's talk about the 5 through 9. We've got right now UCLA, Maryland, Illinois, Ohio State, Oregon. We already talked about how UCLA could possibly move up. Maryland, possibly, but it doesn't look like it with that Ohio State loss. Illinois got the 6 losses, but again, something crazy could happen, and they could find themselves at the 4 seed possibly. But I mean, where are you at here? Let's focus kind of more toward the bottom, right? Ohio State and Oregon kind of barely hanging on there for dear life. Nebraska, Indiana, they're pressing. Rutgers is pressing as well at 5-7. They didn't look like it earlier in the season, but now they're right there as well. So what's your thoughts here? Like, you think it's going to end up UCLA, Maryland, Illinois, Ohio State, Oregon as 5 through 9, or do you think somebody else could kind of pop in there and knock someone else out?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the bottom goes, I think UCLA, Maryland, and Illinois are going to be in that mix. Ohio State, I know they've been playing well lately, but I don't love their team in general. I think they've got a lot of holes, so I could definitely see them dropping. Oregon, I think, gets in there. I do think they are kind of what they are now. They're definitely a mid-table sort of Big Ten team, but I don't think they're going to fall out of the top 9. I think they will stay up there. And I think there's a real possibility for a team like IU that again, they've had a very sort of embattled season. There's a lot going on, but man, they still have really good guys. Ballo is such a monster rim protector. Galloway can shoot. Goody can shoot. I do think IU is still a team that can find their way up into there. So I would say that Oregon and Indiana would be the teams at the bottom of that for me for 8-9.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Ohio State is so difficult for me. I said after the Purdue win, I said, like, what this team did to win this game is great, but it's not sustainable. You can't just ask a player to go off in the second half, go crazy for you, and win a game, and then rely on the star player of the other team to not play as well, right? Like, you can't just rely on that to win these big games, but it happened, and then against Maryland, it essentially happened again. Bruce Thornton went off, and the big guys for Maryland didn't play as well in the second half, and they weren't able to shoot the ball as well either. So maybe Ohio State has found a bit of a formula here. I do think that injuries have really taken their toll on this Ohio State team. Jake Diebler gambled by bringing Aaron Bradshaw in, hoping he was ready for a starting 5 role. He obviously wasn't. Sean Stewart is pretty good, but he's just a foul machine. And then Evan Mahaffey has given them everything he's absolutely got, but he's such a twig down there. I mean, he's not big enough. Strength wise, he's not big enough. He's tall enough. He's just not big enough strength wise, and that's kind of Ohio State's biggest issue right now. They don't have a bruiser down low to play that 5 spot for him that can really kind of go into the china shop and break everything, I guess you could say. But I think Ohio State with the relatively easy schedule to end the year can do it. At Nebraska, this next game, that's going to be tough on Sunday. But then you got Washington, Michigan, Northwestern, Nebraska again at home. You travel to UCLA, USC, and Indiana. Like, I'm not saying all of those are they're going to win or anything like that, but like, those are all pretty winnable games. Really, the only contender you play in that stretch is Michigan, and you get them at home. So you don't play Purdue, you don't play Wisconsin, you don't play Michigan State. Like, you've got a pretty favorable stretch here to end the year. If Ohio State is able to finish in the top 9, I think that's a big reason why.
Yeah, what do you think about Rutgers? Do you feel like they've got a chance to kind of climb up a little bit just because of the star power that they have there? My fear about Rutgers is that those guys are going to sort of tire out a little bit. I don't think their production will probably start to decrease as the season goes on. I was actually just pulling up their schedule to see what they've got. They've got Iowa at home, like at Maryland, but Iowa at home, at Oregon, Washington, SC at home. They go to Michigan, and they do go to Purdue. That's going to be tough, but I that wouldn't surprise me there because again, there's a massive logjam there happening, right? So it's probably you're looking at most likely 10, 11 losses will get 10 losses probably get you into that top 9. But any of those 5 and 7 teams have a chance. It's the question of who. I don't think SC does it. I don't think Nebraska does it. I would say IU, Rutgers, maybe are the ones that have a chance, just because Rutgers has the star power.
Yeah, I wouldn't take Nebraska out of there. I think they have some home games to end the year that could be pivotal for them. How many of their final games are home games? Yeah, they got 5 home games to end the year, so that's going to be a good piece for them there. But I mean, Rutgers at one point the final part of their schedule looked brutal. I think at one point like 10 of their last 11 games were quad 1 games. It's not looking like that so much anymore. With Iowa dropping off a little bit, they're going to go to at Washington. So, that's not necessarily a gimme going there, but then they get Minnesota at home. I mean, the best thing for this team is outside of the at Washington game, all of your hard teams you play are on the road. You're getting favorable matchups at home. So if Rutgers can capitalize and beat Iowa, Washington, USC, Minnesota, and possibly make it interesting with one of these Maryland, Oregon, Michigan, or Purdue, like they could certainly do it. We'll see, but they have the power, the star power. It's just, do they have every other piece there? And then, like you said, do they have the legs to be able to finish it out and get there? At one point, we were concerned that Rutgers wouldn't make the Big Ten tournament. I think that concern is alleviated, thankfully. But I just, more than anything, I want to see this Rutgers team in March. I know it's probably not going to happen, but I want to see this Rutgers team in an NCAA tournament. I just think that would be so much fun with Bailey and Harper.
Dylan Harper's back now, which is great, and he looked gassed yesterday. I mean, really gassed. So he'll come back though. He'll get his fitness up, and I think that him and Bailey are just so good, man. They're incredible.
Yeah, I agree. Philip is predicting Nebraska gets a single bye. With all those home games, I wouldn't put it past them. Fred Hoiberg's got himself a good squad compared to what we thought they might be at the beginning of the year. Juwan Gary and some other guys there have really, really impressed me this year. So yeah. Sorry, guys. I kind of lost my way in the comments. Not as much focusing so much on the conversation. But yeah, good comments. Really appreciate everybody being here and listening. Rajeev, you got anything else on the top 9 you want to talk about before we get out of here?
I just think it's going to be exciting, man. Like I said, I love this. It's the business end of the season here. I mean, all these teams got just 6, 7, 8 games left. I mean, it's going to be really about 8 games left. It's going to be special. This is going to be a really fun end of the season. Who wins the Big Ten is always I think winning the Big Ten conference regular season is extremely special. It's something that I put up there as one of the ultimate things. Tournament is whatever. The Big Ten tournament to me is whatever. But the NCAA tournament is obviously important. But the Big Ten regular season is great. I think Purdue gets it done. But there's going to be it's hopefully going to be a pretty tight race, and hopefully my Badgers can find their way up to the top somehow.
There you go. Yeah, I'm gonna agree with you. I predict Purdue as well. Hard to go against 11-2 right now in the conference.
They're amazing, man. They're so well drilled. They're just well coached. They've got incredible players all up and down the roster. I mean, it's going to be tough to unseat them at the top.
There you go. We started with Purdue. We end with Purdue. There you go, Purdue fans. Gave you your taste there. Rajeev, where can people find you on the Bucky Report?
Yeah, so the Bucky Report on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts, at Rajeev Badgers on Twitter, and I'm also a regular on Locked On Badgers.
There you go. And I think we had Dave in the comments earlier saying he enjoys going over to the Bucky Report from time to time. He's a Minnesota fan, so.
Oh yes, I know. Dave always has a voice on my channel, but those silly Gophers, I tell you.
Anytime you can go on over to the rivals the Rivals channel and maybe talk a little bit of smack. That's always a good time. So, hey, we appreciate you being here. We don't have any SEC rivals coming in and talking smack yet, but I'm sure they'll come eventually. We actually got mentioned on an SEC podcast I was listening to the other day. That SEC podcast, the one with SEC Mike, somebody said, yeah, those stupid guys over at the Big Ten Huddle said the Big Ten is better than the SEC. And I was like, oh, wow. Okay. You called me stupid. That's fine. You mentioned me, though. That's fun.
There you go. There you go. Take the win, JR.
We'll take the win. We'll take the win. All right, everybody. Thanks so much for being here. We appreciate it. My next live stream will most likely be Monday morning with Kent. And then, like I said, these are just kind of be sporadic the rest of the year. I mean, it's one of those things where it's really hard to nail down times and with the way the games are played and stuff like that. So you might see us Thursday, Friday night, stuff like that. It really just depends. If there's a night where there's probably only one Big Ten basketball game, we'll probably shoot for those nights. But overall, just keep an eye out for when we go live. So thanks so much for watching, everybody. We appreciate it. Thank you to Rajeev. Go check him out on the Bucky Report, and we'll see you next time.